They say the Tower of London is the most haunted place in the country. As a tour guide, I have told spooky stories about the ghosts and spirits that lived there, and I never believed in any of them until the day I chanced upon an old article in the Daily Telegraph newspaper. Dated July 1998, it was an interview with a couple who lived in the Tower of London. After reading this journalist's story, I totally changed my mind about those tower ghosts. The interview was with the governor of the Tower of London and his wife. Now, the governor is a most important role, usually given to a retired, high-ranking officer of the British Army. He basically runs the show as a prime tourist attraction, a World Heritage Site, and the storehouse of the priceless crown jewels. This time, it was Major General Geoffrey Field. In 1994, he and his wife, Janice, moved into the Tower of London. They were delighted to live in a place with so much history, however turbulent. This Tudor building, now known as the King's House, was to be their new home. Like many of the homes in the tower, it had been used as a place of confinement for high-ranking prisoners. But that was a long time ago. Now, it was to provide them with comfortable living quarters. Of course, they'd heard about the ghost stories, but they were too busy getting to grips with the new job and didn't give it much thought. And besides, you don't get to be the governor of the tower with your head full of fanciful notions. Not long after they moved in, their daughter Julia, a serious-minded lawyer, came to stay for the weekend. It was then that strange things started to happen. Janice Field had set up one of the spare bedrooms for her daughter to stay in. But as she took her to the room, Julia hesitated. "It makes me feel goosebumpy," she said. "I don't know why, but can I sleep somewhere else? Maybe this room next to it?" So she unpacked her bag, ready to sleep in the Lennox room. The next morning, both mother and daughter regretted this choice. For as Julia awoke, she found herself frantically fighting off a pair of invisible hands. Someone, or something, was trying to smother her. When Janice told other tower residents about what happened to her daughter, they replied, "Oh, that used to happen all the time, which was why there was a house rule that no woman should ever sleep alone in that room. Now they tell me," she thought. But her daughter had returned home and Janice put it out of her mind. That was until the day she went to the Lennox room to look for something. Suddenly, she found herself being propelled through the open door and 8 feet along the hallway by some invisible force. She only just managed to stop herself from crashing through the leaded windows. Rather shaken by the episode, Janice decided to look into what was causing these terrifying phenomena. As she was researching the history of her home, her eye was caught by one particular name: Lady Arbella Stuart. Born in 1575 but orphaned by the age of 7, she was brought up by her wealthy grandmother, the Countess of Shrewsbury, also known as Bess of Hardwicke. As Arbella had no personal fortune, it was her grandmother's job to arrange for her a suitable marriage. There were all sorts of tentative plans and arrangements made to find her a husband. For the right person, she was quite a catch. She could speak several languages, including Greek and Hebrew, and was musically most accomplished. No one thought she was a great beauty, but she was charming and refined. But there was a problem. Queen Elizabeth had reigned as a Protestant ruler since 1558. Since then, she had constantly batted off attempts to dethrone her in favour of a Roman Catholic monarch. Her Catholic cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots, was involved in many of these plots. Elizabeth had to run her country like a police state, with spies positioned everywhere. At the time of Arbella's 10th birthday, Elizabeth was 52 years old, unmarried, and the big question was, who was to succeed her? Arbella was a definite possibility. She was the Queen's third cousin, so very close to the throne. But Arbella had grown into a lonely teenager who didn't get on well with her grandmother. She began to despair about ever finding someone to marry her, and she started drawing up plans to find her own husband. She spent much time with her head in the clouds. Queen Elizabeth felt a bit uneasy about her, so she appointed Arbella as one of her ladies-in-waiting, so she could keep an eye on her. But when the Queen discovered Arbella flirting outrageously with her latest crush, who happened to be the Queen's own favourite, the Earl of Essex, she sent her packing. By the time Elizabeth died in 1603, her councillors had chosen her successor. Rather than flaky Arbella, they asked her cousin, King James VI of Scotland, to come to London and reign as King James I of England. The new king welcomed Arbella to the court, but he too was wary of any marriage treaties that could threaten his stability as the new king, and she was now fourth in line to the throne. When Arbella reached the age of 35 and was still single, she made a terrible mistake. She fell in love with a 22-year-old man called William Seymour. He appeared to reciprocate her feelings, but to choose him of all the possible suitors, William Seymour was himself very high up in the line of succession to the throne, that the king would allow them to marry, it was unthinkable. So one day, Arbella secretly invited William to her apartments at Greenwich Palace, and there they were married. The king soon found out and was furious. He arrested them both, sending William to the Tower of London and Arbella to house arrest a couple of miles away. Unthwarted, the newlyweds spent their days writing love letters to each other. Arbella even managed to sneak out and visit William at the Tower. It was a brief meeting, but long enough for them to plan their escape. On the day, Arbella dressed up as a man with a wig and black cloak. With sword in hand, she escaped to the River Thames, where she caught a boat and set sail to France. Her husband also managed to escape from the Tower. He was due to take another ship and meet her at Calais. But bad weather prevailed, and he made a late start. Arbella was making good progress across the Channel, but was feeling anxious. Where was William? She instructed the crew to slow down to wait for him, but the king's men were in fast pursuit, and eventually they caught up with her. Now it was Lady Arbella's turn to be imprisoned in the Tower of London. William, meanwhile, had arrived safely at Ostend, where he was laying low, and Arbella never saw her husband again. As a lady prisoner of high status, Arbella lived in comfort, but her mind was failing her. She felt sure that she would be soon rehabilitated into the royal court, but after over 4 years of imprisonment, she lost heart and refused to eat. Nobody took her seriously. It was just another call for attention, they thought. Yet she continued to starve herself and grew weaker by the day. And then, on the 25th of September, 1615, she died. Her embalmed body was placed in a plain coffin and rowed along the Thames to Westminster Abbey. Here it was placed in the vault of her aunt, Mary, Queen of Scots. But back to the future in 1994. It was a warm, balmy September. Janice Field was still finding out about the former residence of the King's house in the Tower. And she made another rather strange observation. As she walked along the hallway, all the adjoining rooms felt rather warm, except for one room, the Lennox room, which was always very, very cold. Of course, it was in September when Lady Arbella had spent her dying days in that room, and there was no way she was going to let us forget her. Janice Field reinstated the house rule. No woman was to enter the Lennox room alone again, and especially not in September. So, what do you think? Do you believe that the ghost of Lady Arbella Stuart still haunts the Tower of London? Or do you think it's just the product of an overexcited imagination? Personally, I'm sold. When I guide at the Tower of London, I no longer tell ghost stories that I don't believe in. I only tell this one. Whatever you do believe in, I hope you enjoyed this story. Please leave any comments down below. Give me a like if you like. And for more fascinating stories about lives of Londoners, please subscribe. Thank you so much.